So before we started researching our topic, our group thought that food insecurity was basically just another word for starvation. But when we looked into it, we found that that's actually way off the mark. Food insecurity affects a whole host of people, and an important thing to recognize is that someone who does have something to eat but still lacks proper nutrition can be harmed just as profoundly as someone who misses a meal.
So, who is affected by food insecurity? I'm going to share some numbers with you that help illuminate just how pervasive an issue this is. The first statistic shows how many people struggle with food insecurity within New York City, and this number is in millions. I know a number this big can be hard to visualize, so let me break it down for you. How many of you have been to Madison Square Garden for a basketball game or a concert? If so, raise your hand. Well, it would take 65 Madison Square Gardens to hold all the food insecure people within New York City, which is absolutely crazy. The statistic below shows the number of how many meals New Yorkers have missed. Again, a mind-bogglingly large number. So I want you guys to do something for me. If you were given a green piece of paper, please stand. Essentially, if this was an accurate representation of New York City's youth, all of you would be unable to access the proper nutrients needed, and you wouldn't have a meal tonight. So this just goes to show how much New York is lacking and how much we need to work on and how much our community needs to work together to fix this problem.
Why do New Yorkers struggle to eat well? The poverty line in New York City is $18,300, which is no less than 36% higher than the national average. With New York being such an expensive place to live, it's no wonder that so many families struggle to put food on the table. In 2014, a study showed that nearly half of New Yorkers struggle to make ends meet, which shows that even if these people are not below the federal poverty line with their incomes, they still may have trouble finding a meal. People are often forced to choose between basic needs such as utilities, electricity, running water, clothing even, and a nutritious diet. Imagine having to choose between paying your electricity bill or putting dinner on the table. Although many people receive monthly food stamps, it is rarely enough to cover the cost of all the food they need. And with unhealthy food filled with preservatives, trans fats, and empty calories costing so much less than nutritious food, as much as $150 less per day or $550 less per year, it's no wonder that so many people reach on the shelves for these foods. 80% of adult brain volume is fully developed by age 3 for most children. In New York, 11% of young children live in households with incomes below 50% of the federal poverty line. This is known as deep poverty. As you can see by the figure on the screen, New York, which is in dark blue, has one of the highest rates of childhood deep poverty in America, and this statistic is up from the nationwide 9% in 2008.
So a fallacy which our group encountered very early on while exploring this issue is the notion that hunger is a matter of personal comfort and how people feel. Because a lot of people in this room, myself included, have never had to grapple with a real instance where we lack nourishment, it's very easy for us to overlook the more harmful, serious consequences which are incurred 10, 20, 30 years down the line. Because of this, we don't afford the issue the attention it deserves, and we tend to overlook it. So, first off, malnourishment can cause a very wide range of physical afflictions. This can mean, in the simplest of cases, stunted growth and issues with muscular or bone development, but in the most extreme cases, what you're seeing is children are dying early, and they're dying because they aren't getting the nutrients and the food which everyone deserves, and that is so critical to everyone's body. If there's one point that I make which everyone takes home, I would want it to be this, and that is that when someone is suffering from malnourishment, behavioral changes occur. That means who they are is fundamentally shifted, and they can't be the best version of themselves and function properly in society. On top of that, their ability to perform in school and their ability to get a good education is diminished incredibly. So you're seeing kids fall behind, and even though we're pumping in billions and billions of dollars into our public school system and programs which are designed to help these kids thrive, they can't engage with the material put in front of them. They can't take advantage of these programs. So we're accomplishing very little, and there's not much of an impact on these kids' lives. Hunger and poverty are obviously two very inextricably linked issues. So a lot of the kids who are suffering from poverty and malnourishment face a whole host of other issues which commonly plague impoverished homes. These include, but are by no means limited to, trauma, crime, abuse, and the list really just goes on and on and on. What ends up happening, though, is that kids, like I touched on before, can't socially engage properly. They can't learn properly. So you're seeing lower rates of high school graduation, and you're seeing kids being held back of grades. And we are depriving these kids of the opportunity which everyone deserves to have a good life and the opportunity to make something more of themselves.
Luckily for children such as those described, who come from really diverse backgrounds, there's an organization making a huge impact on these kids' lives. ABC, the Association to Benefit Children, was founded in 1986, and ever since, they have been working relentlessly to help support kids who need them most. Their mission is to defend the right of every child to a joyful and nurturing childhood. And in the next few minutes, we're going to walk you through how and why they've been so incredibly successful so far.
So, as Jamie said, ABC's mission statement is to defend the right of every child to a joyful and nurturing childhood by creating compassionate programs in urgent response to the needs of New York City's most vulnerable children and families. ABC works to accomplish this mission through a huge host of programs, including those working with mental health. They offer therapy and special needs education to kids who need that extra little bit of help and who, in their regular lives, without the help of ABC, would not be able to afford these services, so that they can get that extra little push or that extra little bit of assistance they need to be successful in life and to be upstanding citizens. They also have programs working with healthy eating. So they have gardens, they have obesity prevention programs, they have cooking classes for parents, and they even offer their own sort of take on food stamps, which we'll touch on in a minute, that encourage parents to buy only nutritious food for their children and show them how, even when they're out of ABC's programs, to continue feeding their children nutritious meals. They also have programs, they have Fatherhood Initiatives, which a lot of these families are in need of a strong role model, and a lot of these fathers who maybe weren't prepared to be fathers in the first place don't know how to be role models. So they have a fatherhood group that teaches these fathers how to be leaders for their children, and they take them on bonding activities, and eventually the fathers end up leading their own group, so they really learn how to be role models, not only for their children, but for the community. They have programs working with learning and special needs education, so they have schools all around the city. They mostly work with younger children, preschool-age children, but they offer assistance and tutoring for children throughout high school and beyond. They also have programs working with activity and exercise, and a big focus of ABC is not only working with nutritious food, but also teaching parents and families how to be active. So they offer sports, they have movement classes and dance classes, and they're really showing these parents how to be good role models through enjoying activity and exercise.
So one example of ABC's amazing work that I found especially touching was a newborn baby whose mother abandoned it at birth because she was afraid she and her husband would not be able to support the family. So the father of this baby took both of them to ABC, and ABC took them in and fed them and helped them get back on their feet. The child is now a few years old, living at ABC, very healthy, and the father has a full-time job working at ABC.
So ABC offers a variety of great programs within their organization. And the first one I'm going to touch on is the Open Door program. They offer a warm, hearty meal to anyone who comes through ESL classes and cooking classes. And what struck us the most was that they offered a high school diploma and setting goals towards that for their kids. And they also work on combining healthy eating habits with also academics, which is just a great combination. The second program that they have is Farm to Preschool program, which teaches kids from a young age about healthy eating and how to get them used to fruits and vegetables. And they even have a location on 124th Street where the kids help out at a garden. And so the next thing they have is called Health Bucks. And basically how that works is parents go to movement classes with their kids and they earn health bucks for that. And the health bucks provide them with recipes and ingredients to make meals. So this not only bonds the families, but it also teaches parents how to cook healthy and nutritious meals for their kids. And they also have an obesity prevention program, which they tackle with a lot of activities, and they even had a soccer program. And then the last is Familia, which screens kids for their health and makes sure that everything's right. And this is especially crucial because they lack proper health care, and so this just supplies them with everything that they need.
So what drew us to ABC in the first place is their incredible determination to leave absolutely nobody behind. While a lot of organizations out there are shying away from the most complex, difficult situations, what you see with ABC is they're going out and they're actively trying to identify the most beleaguered, needy kids who without ABC support would really have no shot at a better life. Another thing which we totally love is that they're intervening at a very, very young age. When an intervention is made later on in a kid's life, you run two risks. The first is that you won't be able to right the ship because they've already been set on a certain trajectory, and so it's that much harder to change it than if you would just set them on the right path to begin with. And B, the intensity of the funding and the support needed is exponentially higher. By making sure they're getting involved at a young age, what ABC does is they utilize the resources at their disposal most effectively, and they make the biggest impact on these kids' lives. I think that what I personally attribute a lot of ABC's success to in recent years is the fact that they take a very unique, holistic, comprehensive approach to helping kids. I don't believe that you can compartmentalize different areas of someone's life. Everything is intimately connected, whether it be education, their mental state, their nutrients they're getting, it all affects one another. So if you want to see a real difference 10, 20, 30 years down the line, it's crucial that you make sure everything is addressed and that nothing goes unnoticed. Lastly, ABC integrates entire families. They offer support to mothers and fathers, and what this does is it causes a dramatic shift in the culture and the home environment of these kids. When you come from an impoverished home, the idea that you can be a success and the idea that you can accomplish your goals is very far-fetched. But after ABC is through, these kids believe that they can do what they set their mind to, and ABC guides them, along with their families, towards achieving their very attainable goals.
So we were lucky enough to be able to visit ABC's Echo Park location up in Harlem, where the majority of their classrooms are and where the headquarters for a lot of their programs are. They had dozens of classrooms there, many of which we were able to tour, and really they looked like the classrooms that we have here in our school. And I think that's part of the point of ABC, is that they want to give these kids the same education that they could get anywhere else. But the special thing about ABC is that they're not taking kids who are in the worst situations and saying, we don't want to deal with this, this is too much work, we're putting you on a wait list. They actually work really hard to give priority to the kids who come from the worst situations, who have the most stressors at home, who may have faced abuse or neglect, and these are the kids who they really want to help. We also were able to look at their toddler and newborn rooms, which were adorable, and also it was just showing us, and it was really amazing that ABC takes these kids from a very young age and works with them all throughout their childhood so that they can set them up to be successful and be good citizens later on in life.
So here's a video from our visit, and we had the pleasure of meeting these kids in the after-school program. And I could talk about the joy that ABC gives these kids, but I think the video really speaks for itself.
So we have here is some balloons which the kids in the program wrote that describe their goals for the future. And so we're just going to share a few of them.
Okay, so the first balloon reads, "In 10 years, I will be 19, turning 20. So I want to be in college and get a part-time job in summer. Also, I would like to go to culinary school."
Another slide reads, "I will go to school to be a police officer."
I will be big, and I will be helping my mom and my brother, Liam, ending college.
And the next one reads, "In 10 years, I will be 15. I want to draw pictures." So here are some numbers which show how much of an impact ABC has been making. So the first number shows that the ABC preschool programs outperformed those in Head Start, which is a government-run program, by 100% with regards to developing essential skills. The next one shows that 93% of ABC's graduating class went to surpass or meet expectations of literacy in the nation. And the third one, which we found the most groundbreaking, was the fact that usually the Black and Latino population, only 60% of them graduated high school, but when they went to ABC, every single one of them passed. Every single one of them graduated, and none of them failed. And this was because ABC was there with them every step of the way.
So when we were talking to the people at ABC, originally we weren't really sure where exactly we wanted the $5,000, if we were able to win it, to go to. But as we continued to talk to them, we learned about Camp Calvin. Camp Calvin is a summer day camp for these kids that at first seemed like maybe not the most pressing issue that ABC was dealing with, but as we learned more about it, we realized that during the summer when school's out, these kids are much more likely, because of their socioeconomic status, to be put in dangerous and stressful situations without guidance. And Camp Calvin takes these kids and offers them a safe, nurturing, fun environment throughout the summer. They offer them nutritious meals. They take them on different field trips to learn about the city where they live. And Camp Calvin, unfortunately, is not funded by the government, even though 80% of ABC's funding does come from the government. So Camp Calvin, they struggle sometimes to run it, and Camp Calvin needs $100,000 to run this year, and $5,000 would make such a huge dent and really help these kids be able to have an amazing summer.
When I first walked into ABC, because I'd heard of a lot of the unimaginable tribulations these kids have been through, I had the expectation that there was going to be a center full of very battered, despondent youth, and I'm telling you right now, I could not have been farther off the mark. The dedication and the passion, which is evident in everything the volunteers do, has created this community where everyone is told they are talented, they are intelligent, and that with hard work, just like any of us, they can achieve their goals. The unwavering commitment and love which they show to every single person that they take into their community is why they've been such a resounding success in the past years, and why going forward they will continue to be such a resounding success. $5,000 at another organization might provide a service that is fleeting and doesn't really make an impact in the long run, but $5,000 at ABC is going to change a kid's life and give them a chance to be their best selves. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So, judges and audience, use your rubric. Make sure two things. Make sure you add the name of the organization at the top. And after you have selected your scores, create a total and record that at the bottom. Pass them inward so our volunteers can collect them. And while people are scoring, does anybody have a question, judges, or a comment to this student team? And audience, you also, if you do, just raise your hand and you can pose it.
Great presentation. Thank you all very much. You made an incredibly compelling argument about food insecurity and why the effect on kids long and short term. Which of the ABC's programs do you think most directly, which of their food programs most directly impacts food insecurity, and why?
What I would say is the Health Bucks program, and kind of coming back to the thing we touched on before, which is the integration of families. A lot of these kids haven't been exposed to the idea that a nutritious meal is important, and they don't know what of the effects which we just delineated. So I think what this program does is it creates an environment at home where there is an emphasis on this and where this is seen as important. And so going into adulthood, these kids have been raised with the idea that I should be eating the right kind of foods, and that has a tremendous impact.
And if I could just add on really quickly, so we were initially looking for a program or an organization that more directly tackled only food insecurity, and we actually learned about ABC through an old Times article about a program that they used to have called Baked in the Hood, where they would bring people in and teach them how to bake so that they could get jobs in the food industry, and that's how we first reached out to ABC. But when we went to visit them, we realized that they have this huge array of programs, and really that they're not just doing one thing, they're doing an innumerable amount of things.
Thank you all. We're going to get
Hi, I'm Sofia.
I'm Cordelia.
I'm Georgia.
And I'm Julia. So for our YPI project, we decided on the topic of health education and healthy practices for NYC youth, and the organization that worked with what we wanted to do was Edible Schoolyard.
There are 1.1 million public school students in New York City. Food insecurity affects approximately 1 in 4 children in New York City. More than 40% of public school students in New York are obese or overweight due to a lack of healthy or nutritious food. Childhood obesity and other food-related diseases disproportionately affect low-income communities and communities of color. In New York City, obesity rates in Harlem are 3 times what they are on the Upper East Side. By focusing on these alarming statistics and how they so negatively affect students in New York City, we can aid in solving this problem.
So we chose Edible Schoolyard because its mission resonated with us and directly correlated with the social issue we decided to focus on. Food and healthy education for NYC youth will help kids throughout their lives, as well as inspire and educate their parents and their own kids and generations in the future.
Edible Schoolyard is a 7-year-old nonprofit organization, and it teaches children the connection between food, health, and in the environment by integrating an edible education program into the school's everyday curriculum. They work with students and provide hands-on opportunities in urban-grown schoolyard gardens and in cooking classes, as well as allowing them to think, discuss, and learn in typical classroom environments.
And according to their website, they are growing healthier kids through a grassroots approach to food education that combines academic rigor and hands-on creative engagement.
They aim to educate students, particularly in areas identified by the NYC Department of Health as having the highest rates of diet-related diseases, about eating and living healthfully and maintaining well-being through healthy eating habits.
Students are also able to fully enjoy themselves and learn skills that they will utilize for the rest of their lives.
Edible Schoolyard's outreach expands food education. They were established in 2010 and have taken tremendous steps toward achieving their goal. The Edible Schoolyard teaches 2,825 students every year through direct classroom experience, and in 2015-2016 school year alone, they trained 209 educators through professional development workshops, and they in turn took approximately 53,377 students in total.
So Edible Schoolyard NYC serves the NYC community directly by working alongside NYC public schools, particularly those, like Sofia was saying, in low-income communities, and those who suffer from the most dietary-related diseases.
The organization helps set up urban gardens and schoolyards and helps to educate students through a mix of hands-on gardening work, cooking classes, and discussion sessions on how to choose, make, and eat healthy and sustainable foods, and ultimately maintain a healthy diet and lifestyle. And their 3 programs are network schools, demonstration schools, and professional development.
So as Georgia just mentioned, the first program that Edible Schoolyard has is called Network Schools. So network schools are located in neighborhoods that are identified by the New York City Department of Health as having high rates of diet-related diseases and large numbers of children from low-income families. Edible Schoolyard works closely with the network school staff and communities to expand gardens, add kitchen classes, and mainly to promote a vibrant culture around healthy food. Network school communities learn to grow and manage their own edible education programs, which means that each school's program is unique and based on each community's needs and resources.
Their second program, demonstration schools. In demonstration schools, food and health education is made a necessary part of a student's curriculum. Hands-on gardening and kitchen classes are part of a regular school day. They work with partner organizations to provide healthy food options for students. They provide free workshops for cooking at night. They allow for weekend community services, including gardening kitchens, which are open to the public. They have weekly affordable farm stand, which accepts EBT and SNIP benefits. And the recipe tasting is organized by students for farm stand made food.
So comparing the network schools and the demonstration schools, there are typically 5 staff members from Edible Schoolyard at each school. And every student gets at least 2 kitchen classes and class periods and 2 garden class periods per month. Edible Schoolyard starts by reaching out to target neighborhoods, like we were saying before, with the highest rates of obesity and asthma and other food-related diseases. Approximately 25% of students that they serve are homeless or in transitional housing. Edible Schoolyard works with teachers to identify curriculums to make sense based on that particular school. So they want to incorporate their ideology into that school and help that school thrive, because the teachers know the students best and they really want to help support the students. They incorporate academics into the Edible Schoolyard curriculum. So for an example, ratios in math class are used when they're separating seeds in the garden class.
So their last program is called Professional Development, and they provide after-school and evening events for nonprofit workers, teachers, and volunteers to attend. They come to learn how to integrate edible education into the curriculum, and they learn the knowledge, skills, and confidence needed to teach, build, and maintain kitchen and gardens. And all the events are hosted at demonstration schools.
So in order to get a better sense of Edible Schoolyard's impact on a school environment, we met with Andrew Barrett, the program director of Edible Schoolyard at PS7, which is a demonstration school located in East Harlem.
So this is Andrew Barrett, the program director, and he explained that although Edible Schoolyard is trying to develop ways to gather specific metrics for its success, as is the demand, the response to these initial 2 years has been overwhelmingly positive. There are many anecdotes for success from parents and principals, staff, and teachers regarding the socio-emotional impacts of the program, as Andrew was telling us, including the teamwork building, the collaboration, the self-efficacy, and the confidence around being able to cook your own food and grow your own food. And he personally said that he loves this idea of healthy food education being a part of a 3-legged stool, so geographic access, economic access, and education. And he says Edible Schoolyard is really trying to be a part of that solution, part of that stool. And it's not trying to be the entire solution, but it's trying to help grow and maintain that solution.
First walking into PS7, Andrew led us to the outer courtyard. This outer courtyard is a vibrant place where children can learn to healthy food practices and can play. The outside courtyard, with guidance and resources provided by Edible Schoolyard, has been transformed into a colorful, interactive urban garden in which students are given the opportunity to work hands-on in the dirt to grow their own produce and learn about sustainable food sources.
So when we went into one of the classrooms, they have this kitchen set up, and Edible Schoolyard on its website explains that the program is essentially a seed-to-table education. So students are able to prepare the soil, plant the seed, care for the seed, harvest the plant, and then use the plant in a kitchen that they are provided with. And this space helps them to learn how to make healthy meals in a safe and productive way. So students learn new recipes and food preparation, as you can see, including how to handle kitchen utensils and clean up after themselves. They develop a sense of connection to their food and a responsibility for their own health and well-being. And actually, when we first walked into the kitchen class, first of all, we were greeted with such kindness from the staff and teachers, but we saw 2 students cleaning up after themselves, cleaning the dishes in the sink. And it was a transition. It was in between class periods, so it wasn't actually a part of their class requirement, but they were doing it because it was their responsibility, and they actually didn't look sad about it. They didn't look angry about it, which is a typical thing you might think of. They actually were diligently washing the dishes and cleaning up after themselves. They looked happy and involved and present, and I think it really reveals, as Andrew was telling us, the program's socio-emotional effects on the student participants.
So adjacent to the kitchen classroom, there is an inner greenhouse where plants can be grown without concern for inclement weather. So when we first walked into the greenhouse, we were shocked by how bright, colorful, and inviting it is. So Andrew later explained to us that many families within the Edible Schoolyard program regard this space as some sort of safe haven, which they could utilize for parties or family gatherings, so it truly is a communal space. And the greenhouse is also equipped with benches and work tables for the students to use. And there are multiple types of plants to accommodate different types of growing. And also, when looking out of the circular windows, we were able to look out onto the outer courtyard, which Georgia mentioned. And it was just such a nice sight to see all of the kids playing around the garden.
So right next to the inner greenhouse, they have a rooftop planting area, and they utilize it to further extend the urban school garden. And so although we didn't get that up close to it because of the weather, we heard from Andrew how excited the children were to learn about gardening.
So walking into the inner greenhouse, one of the first things we noticed were posters that the children themselves had made along the far side. So we learned from Andrew Barrett that over the past few years, Edible Schoolyard has developed language and values around inclusivity, and over time they've been able to move in a direction that can work to solve political issues and shine a light on them. So as you can see in the picture on the right, teachers will put up questions about inclusivity and diversity, and the students themselves will take post-it notes to answer the question, and in this question is, what does it mean to be an ally?
So adding on to this idea of inclusivity and a space for all, safe space for all, when we first walked into the kitchen class, we saw it was kind of the agenda for the day, the Three Sisters Empanadas, so corn, pinto beans, and butternut squash, and they would make empanadas out of those 3 ingredients. Also, at the back of the greenhouse, we saw posters comparing English and Spanish words like toalla and towel, like things you would use in a garden typically. And we asked Andrew about this, and he says Edible Schoolyard is really trying to be culturally responsive. One main story he told us that really spoke to him was when they were trying to make sancocho, but they don't have meat because they grow things from the ground, and typically sancocho is made with meat. So they were thinking, how can we incorporate vegetables into this very culturally relevant dish? So they ended up using butternut squash, which is in the Three Sisters Empanadas, and potatoes. And they gave it to the parents, and they loved it. They gave it to the children, and they loved it. But what was really validating for them was when a student said, "Oh, my grandmother puts that in her sancocho." And it was really validating for them, and it showed that kids are able to identify with the food that they're making and feel a part of the community and comfortable with their own cultural identity. It is definitely indicative of the ideology that Edible Schoolyard fosters regarding cultural acceptance and awareness, and highlights the idea that food unifies us and unites us and is not meant to divide us.
So now comes the pressing question of how the $5,000 would be spent. So Andrew explained to us that it would be necessary for him to consult with the rest of his staff members in order to ultimately decide where the money would go. However, some of his personal ideas include improving and expanding network and demonstration school programs. And since we visited a demonstration school, PS7, ourselves, we feel really passionately that some of the money would go there. And he also mentioned kickstarting certain garden infrastructure projects at some of the network schools, such as a rainwater harvesting shade structure, which would make the time that these kids spend gardening even more enjoyable.
So to get involved, Edible Schoolyard welcomes volunteers, and they explain on their website that volunteers assist in the kitchen or garden 1 or 2 weekdays per week, and during the school day 2 or 3 for 3 to 5 months during fall or spring semester. Edible Schoolyard also explains that in order to maintain the safety of kids they work with and the security of the school community, each volunteer is required to undergo a one-time fingerprinted background check.
Your current occupation does not hinder you from being a part of the solution. Edible Schoolyard graciously welcomes donations and is open to any legal, administrative, or other advice that you have to offer. We encourage you to visit Edible Schoolyard's website, edibleschoolyardnyc.org, to get involved today.
And Edible Schoolyard also hosts, adding on to this idea of volunteering, a variety of different events throughout the year, including a spring event benefit this Monday, April 24th, a showcase school visit to PS 216 on Wednesday, April 26th, and a professional development workshop on garden maintenance, which will be on Thursday, April 27th.
So we asked Andrew about potential volunteer opportunities for us to participate in, and we are currently trying to figure out ways to actively engage in this organization we are so passionate about. It's difficult because we are unavailable to volunteer throughout the school day when this program is in session, but in the meantime, we will continue to educate people on the important social issue at hand and the transformational work that Edible Schoolyard provides for our growing New York City community. Thank you for watching.
All right, you all will just stay up there for some questions. Audience, while you're tabulating your rubrics, if somebody has a question, you can just raise your hand. But we'll start with the judges. If the judges could take a moment to pose a question to this student group, that would be great.
I'd be interested in hearing more about your thoughts about the long-term impact of this work.
That was one of the main reasons we chose this specifically, because it targets children and how they would be affected by the program. And we really were thinking, and we kept discussing this with Andrew too, how they can not only learn themselves, but also it's a community thing. They're teaching their parents, they're teaching their grandparents, and it will just go on for generations to come. And it's almost like when you're learning a language too, like you learn early, you learn it better, and you're able to share it with other people. So I think that's really important too.
Also, one of the questions we posed was, why doesn't Edible Schoolyard come into high schools? And it was explained to us that by integrating this program in lower and middle schools, the younger the children are, the more they can integrate this into their lives and really take the things that they learn from this program with them.
Thank you so much.
Hi. Before we start, I'd like to mention that April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and with that, I'd like to bridge into our YPI social issue, domestic violence.
So, what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is physical, emotional, psychological, economic, and sexual abuse. Domestic violence affects 1 in 4 women, 1 in 14 men, and it can happen to any person regardless of their sex. However, it is more commonly a female abused by her male partner.
Domestic violence, one of the most serious issues all around the world, results in many physical and mental effects. Domestic violence leads to mental health issues, wounds from knives and guns when there's a weapon involved, and many other immediate effects and problems. Domestic violence also can lead to hearing and vision loss, as well as physical injuries from the abuser. In addition, there are many long-term effects of domestic abuse. These include stress, anxiety and depression, PTSD, homelessness, as well as suicide and even homicide. On an average day, there are 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide. 1/3 of American women murdered in every given year are killed by their current or former partner. Additionally, nearly 20 people a minute are abused physically by an intimate partner in the U.S.
Okay, so when speaking with one of the shelter heads at the organization we picked, Safe Horizon, one main topic that came up was isolation. The tactics used in order to isolate somebody from their friends and family can be especially harsh in New York City. This is because of the close proximity to things. Therefore, the abuser can often use harsher and rougher means to keep one in their apartment or home. Besides that, there are two main themes that remain constant in domestic violence no matter where you are in the world. These two themes are power and control. Abusers often have a higher power in the relationship than their partner. That is the difference between domestic violence and an unhealthy relationship. Another thing that can often be a problem is the abuser will threaten to inform the police if the victim happens to be an illegal immigrant, which can also be a vital tactic in gaining control and power over them.
Introducing Safe Horizon, moving victims of violence from crisis to confidence. Safe Horizon is an amazing organization that provides support for domestic violence victims as well as child abuse victims all over New York State. In fact, they're the nation's leading assistance organization. Safe Horizon's mission is to provide support, prevent violence, and promote justice for victims of crime and abuse, their families, and communities.
Safe Horizon has been around for over 39 years. There are over 75 locations throughout the 5 boroughs, over 600 employees, many volunteers, and they also collaborate with other groups in New York. Okay, so these are some quotes from victims who reached out to Safe Horizon.
I knew that it was okay that I needed help and support. It was scary, but I'm happy that I knew that Safe Horizon was there to assist me. Joanne, a domestic violence survivor.
There was more pain from the emotional and mental abuse than the physical. Safe Horizon helped me tremendously. Mimi, a domestic violence survivor.
With one call, I entered a safe place where I received counseling to heal from the trauma and found other women who had been through my ordeal. Lily Morales, a domestic violence survivor.
The interesting thing about Joanne is that she actually worked at Safe Horizon for 3 years before she became a victim of domestic abuse. So, how many people do you think Safe Horizon helps annually? Alexa. Actually, Safe Horizon helps 250,000 people annually. Safe Horizon is able to help 250,000 people every year. That's 685 people every single day.
Here's a victim who reached out to Safe Horizon in her time of need. Lisa was able to get into a Safe Horizon shelter and get the help that she needed.
Domestic violence is alive and well in the LGBTQ community. Well, I was in an 18-year relationship. I came home with my children to my then partner, who was just irate. October 17th, approximately 9:54 p.m. on a Sunday, she just began to beat me in front of my children. Not knowing what to do or where to go or who to turn to, I Googled, domestic violence, and Safe Horizons popped up. When you are in an abusive relationship and then you find a safe place to go where you can just explode any emotions that you are feeling, you are able to just put it out there, and you have someone that's sitting there just allowing you to just vent. I'm a champion for Safe Horizons. I don't know where I would be if Safe Horizons was not there for not only me, but for my children.
One One thing is that Lisa was very lucky to have Googled domestic violence, but a lot of times the victims are just afraid to do this. And one interesting feature on the Safe Horizon website is they have a tab that says click here, and if you click on it, it's red and it's on the side, and it completely wipes your page. And if you try to go back, it shows weather and food that you look, like it just shows things, so in case the abuser would come into the room, the victim can quickly get out of the website.
Safe Horizon provides a multitude of support programs. However, we're deciding to focus on their hotlines and domestic violence shelters because donation money is normally applied to these programs. Doctors and lawyers offer pro bono work, making it easier and cheaper for Safe Horizon to provide certain programs.
Hotlines. Hotlines operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. This is one of the most important programs because it provides with immediate relief and is the first step to helping them escape a dangerous situation and begin a new life. Hotline Advocates offer non-judgmental support in order to discuss safety, resources in their communities, and to connect them to Safe Horizons programs and services. Last year, there were 123,000 calls made to Safe Horizons Hotline. Hotlines provide one-on-one support including crisis counseling, safety planning, and assistance with finding a shelter and information about resources.
Safe Horizon has 8 shelters scattered all over New York City. These shelters help provide short-term residencies for all members in need of a home. These shelters do an immense amount in order to ensure the victim's safety and happiness. The shelter staff hold support and counseling groups. They help the victims build lifelong skills that will help them later on in the future. Housing and employment assistance, legal consultations, temporary child care, case management, and even practical assistance are all offered at these shelters. Additionally, these locations are all confidential in order to ensure the victim's safety. One example of the many activities that they provide at these shelters is birthday parties, as well as dance parties and even yoga classes.
The first image shows a mural painted by a domestic violence survivor. The second shows a child care center in the Safe Horizon unit. And the third image shows a Mother's Day celebration for all of Safe Horizon's clients. And the fourth image shows a typical bedroom of a Safe Horizon domestic violence shelter.
And Mother's Day is an especially important holiday at Safe Horizon because most of the time, although there are some male victims, most of the time the victims are female. So the Mother's Day is just a very celebrated holiday. So the time frame that a victim has to get into a shelter is very limited. That's why there's a rule that a victim can be put on hold for no longer than 60 seconds. Once that happens, they are told to pack a limited amount of items and meet a Safe Horizon representative at a neutral location. This could be a grocery store or a gas station or any public place. Once this happens, they arrive at a shelter and receive support as well as any legal help that they may need. But most importantly, they arrive to a safe and welcoming community that is willing to give them help. This shocked us the most when we spoke with the shelter representative. We already knew that the situation these victims were in were very hard, but not bringing anything with you and traveling to a community that you know nothing about takes a tremendous amount of bravery, which was really inspiring for us.
Even small donations to Safe Horizon can go a long way in the process of helping a victim to safety. With a mere $16, a call can be answered on a Safe Horizon hotline. For only $31, Safe Horizon is able to provide transportation to a domestic violence shelter. For $50, Safe Horizon can provide 10 meals at street work. For $100, they can pay for a full day's worth of childcare while a child's parent might be in court. Finally, for just $148, Safe Horizon can provide a family at a domestic violence shelter a full kit full of all the necessary necessities for creating a comfortable environment for the victims.
And just because this was something that was mentioned before, Street Work is a program that helps provide meals for homeless people. And one of the main causes of homelessness in New York City is domestic abuse. So that is why this organization helps.
So imagine what $5,000 can do
Well, actually 10,000. Steve Parrish, the board chair, and his family are matching up every donation up to $25,000. That means if we are given $5,000, we will actually be able to donate $10,000 to Safe Horizon.
So what would this money actually do? So some people, like I've said before, due to isolation, have no money of their own and no personal items. Others cannot afford to pack a suitcase because their abuser might realize that they are trying to leave, and packing a suitcase is definitely a red flag to the abuser. Safe Horizon starter kits and supplies make this difficult time for the victims much easier. We as students would like to help families get the things such as toiletries, food, clothes, and other basic necessities that they themselves were not able to take. And one supply that we heard was very popular and needed at these shelters were diapers. This is what the shelter had told us. And this money will help families in shelters get basic needs, help, and support from Safe Horizon. When talking to the shelter head, she mentioned that it was a dream of hers to end domestic violence. And we realized that ending domestic violence is an impossible feat and that the abusers will continue to exist. However, that just emphasizes the fact that Safe Horizon is an extremely important organization because they help victims not only get out of these dangerous situations, but help these survivors start over.
So how can we contribute? Well, with a topic like domestic violence, safety and support for the victims is at the utmost importance. This means that shelters aren't open to general public and only trained professionals can actually work with victims. But you can always donate, and Safe Horizon hosts many seminars for people to learn more about domestic violence and for survivors to talk about their own stories, and many other events to help prepare stuff for new families coming into shelters, like the one above where they have young volunteers making cards for the families in shelters. Thanks for watching.
All right, can we start with some questions for this student group from Safe Horizons? Judges, you have a shared microphone on each table.
Do you know if they receive only private funds? Do you know if they have any government funding? I'm not sure if they revealed that to you, but
One thing that was mentioned to us by the shelter head was that unlike homeless shelters, domestic violence shelters are not funded by the government at all. So and she said that most of the money that she gets are from private funders.
Can you describe some of the steps they're taking to help reacclimate these people into society after they come through the organization?
Okay. Well, there are many things. One is that they're trying to make a new program that helps not only the victims but also the abusers. It's more of like a family counseling. But to help acclimate them, they often set them up in apartments and help their children get to school, which we've heard is a big problem as well. So. So a starter kit includes clothing, diapers, as well as like a bed at a domestic violence shelter. There are 8 shelters all throughout New York City, and they are housed in those shelters. And then they also have access to low-income housing so that they can get acclimated afterwards.
When the victims are housed in these shelters, do they stay in the shelters or are they allowed out?
For the most part, they are recommended that they do stay in shelters because it's very dangerous to be outside, especially since there are ways for an abuser to find a victim. But there are also programs that allow people to stay in different apartments outside of the shelter, and they have people check up on you every once in a while, so you don't have to be in a shelter.
Yeah, it's not like one thing that was emphasized by the shelter head is it's not like you're in a prison, like you are completely able to leave if you'd like. They just recommend, just for safety, that you don't share with your family or anybody where you are or the location of the shelter.
Any other questions in the audience? Yes.
How does the victim leave the abuser, like without telling them where they're going? How do they leave for a long period of time?
So the process usually starts with a call, which happens mostly when the victim isn't around. From there, victims are told not to pack a suitcase, but they're just told to try to leave the house whenever the victim isn't there, and they'll just meet him at a secure location, very general, usually not very specific, like a supermarket or a gas station or something.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to the next student team. Thank you so much.